Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the new year and the Post Falls Urban Renewal Commission's January meeting. It is January 18th, 2018, and I'd like to call a meeting to order and ask Director Fountain to call the roll.
Thank you. Good morning. Commissioner Carstensen?
Here.
Crosby?
Here.
Hauser?
Here.
Coles?
Here.
Davis?
Here.
Baltzell?
Here.
Thank you.
Would you please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all for coming and being here in this semi-rainy day. Ceremonies, appointments, and announcements. First up on the agenda, I just would like to announce that Colin Coles and Tom Malzahn's normal terms expired December 31st. Colin has agreed to continue on, however, action has not been taken yet by the mayor and council, but that will happen. But according to the code, you're able to continue on in that role, this role, until such time as a replacement is there, and so we're assuming that will be you. Tom Malzahn has asked not to be considered for a follow-on term, and so the mayor and the council are considering an applicant for replacement, and we should have that approved by the first council meeting in February. So next month should have a new commissioner on board. Next item on the agenda is the election of officers. The first meeting in January is when we elect our officers for the next year. And we'll do chairman, vice chairman, and treasurer positions. And I'd open the nominations for the position of chairman. Are there any nominations?
Mr. Chairman, I would nominate Jerry Baltzell as chairman.
Okay.
Second.
Is there a second? Okay. Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? If there are no other nominations, I guess we will have a show of hands. All in favor of Jerry Baltzell as chairman, raise your right hand. Okay. Opposed, same sign. I abstain.
What if you were left-handed?
Okay. Thank you, I guess. Nominations are open for the position of vice chairman for Urban Renewal. Is there a nomination?
Can I make a nomination that we just keep our existing officers in place and do it all in one full swoop?
Is that a motion?
That is a motion, but I wanted to make sure that was appropriate.
That's fine.
That's fine? Okay, well then
I'll second that.
I'd make a
Okay, it's
motion.
moved and seconded. That'll be a quick one. Any further discussion on that? All right, all in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed, same sign. So, thank you, and that means that in addition to myself as chairman, Larry Carstensen will continue on as vice chairman, and Len Crosby will continue on as treasurer. And I thank you all for what you do. That was quick, huh? Conflict disclosures. Do any of the commissioners have any conflicts to disclose on anything that is forecast on the agenda for today? Okay, hearing none, let's move on to the consent calendar.
Thank
Director
you.
Fountain.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairman Baltzell and Commissioners. Item A in the consent calendar is the commission meeting minutes of December 12th, 2017. Item B is the Finance and Policy Committee meeting of December 20th, 2017. Item C is the payables for this month totaling $7,353.79. Item D is the bank activity report, which shows total in all funds of $4,003,850 and accrued interest for the month of $2,006.11. The Idaho Central Credit Union CD is nearing FDIC limit, and so they will be issuing us quarterly interest payments to keep that CD under the $250,000. I received an interest payment of $1,091.04 for the January interest, and that will be reflected in our next financial statements, but that amount has been transferred into the general fund. Item E is the financial reports as of December 31st, which includes the first quarter budget to actual. And your approval of the consent calendar will authorize the transfer of $2,006.11 accrued interest to the general fund and transfer to the Community First checking account $7,353.78 to cover the general payables. I would answer any questions.
Any questions on any item in the consent calendar? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to approve.
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we approve the consent calendar, and in doing so, I would note that we are, for the first quarter, $9,000 under budget.
Okay,
Second.
second. Voice vote, okay? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Thank you all. Committee updates, Finance and Policy, Commissioner Crosby.
The Financial Committee reviewed the December financial statements and reconciled them with the bank statements. So that's all been verified.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Coles, District Review, anything new?
I have nothing this
Nothing new
time.
to report. And Commissioner Carstensen, Communications, Property, and Personnel.
As you're aware, we had talked about updating the website for current information. We got Diane got a quote back on that. It was, we thought, extremely high. And with the possibility of new districts coming on this year or next year, we decided to bag it and not do anything on it. So that's our recommendation.
Any comments or questions?
I just have a question. So the website will still be maintained, though? I mean, the information will be accurate?
It's actually the video,
Oh, the video, okay.
agency video, yeah, so it will just remain as it is on the website.
It's not accurate, but it's,
The video's not, okay, I just, you had
yeah.
said website, so I was.
Yeah, it's just
It's
dated.
accurate, it's not up to date.
right.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering whether we should take the video off the website and just indicate something that says video presentation is available on request or something like that, or do you think we need to leave it on there? That would just,
I would say leave it on there with the inaccurate information, because if they're looking at it from Alabama, they don't know what part is inaccurate at this point.
true. The picture is still good. I mean,
Right.
how it presents Post Falls is still
Yeah,
good.
Outdated.
yeah.
I would say outdated, not inaccurate.
Yeah.
It's outdated information.
The information's accurate, it's just the people that are
Yeah,
interviewed in it are
Right.
not in the current position.
Right.
So I think that was.
exactly. So just leave it the way it is?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, sounds good, thank you. And also, as it relates to the committees, I think that the committee chairman and the people on the committees have been doing a really good job with all the issues as they come up, and I would like to ask those chairman of those committees if they would continue on, and if they would be okay with keeping the personnel that serve on those committees intact. That make sense?
Sure.
Yeah, is there, everybody okay with doing that? And we'll have the new person, the new commissioner that's brought on board, take the place or fill in for where Tom Malzahn was on the Finance Committee. That make sense?
Yes.
If at any time, any of the commissioners feel they'd like to move to a different committee or something, let me know, and we can take care of that pretty easily and make a little switch if we need to. But I think it's been working well. You're all well in tune with what your committee's doing and supposed to be doing, and that shows in the results. So thank you for doing that. Okay, that was easy too. My gosh. Citizen comments. This section of the agenda is reserved for citizens wishing to address the commission regarding an agency-related issue. Comments related to a future public hearing should be held for that public hearing. Persons wishing to speak will have 5 minutes. Do we have anyone that wants to speak? Other than you. We know you're going to speak. Okay. Hearing none, we'll move on to unfinished business. Is there any unfinished business to address? I'm not aware of any. Okay. New business. Under new business, our fiscal year 2017 audit presentation is available for us. Lee Anderson is here from Anderson Brothers CPA to present the annual audit. Lee?
Thank you. Before I get started, does anyone have any questions from what they've reviewed of the audit? No? Okay. Okay, well, I'm Lee Anderson with Anderson Brothers. I was involved with your audit this year, and due to some changeover in staff, I'm doing the presentation this year. So let's go down to page 1 and 2 is our auditor's report, opinion on your financial statement. In your case, we issued an unqualified opinion, meaning that in our opinion, your financial statements are fairly stated and accurate. So that covers page 1 and 2. Page 3 through 8 is the what's called management discussion and analysis. It's basically a narrative report on your financial statements, or it's prepared by you, but it summarizes the financial data in the audit, both from a government-wide perspective and a fund perspective for the last 2 years. You've probably already reviewed and approved that. So page 9 is the statement of net position. This is your overall full accrual position, indicating your assets, liabilities, and net position. So in your case, you have current assets of approximately $2.4 million. That includes cash, and bank accounts, state investment pool, property taxes receivable, and prepaid expenses. Other assets, you have some restricted investments for debt covenants, and then some investments that are not reflected as current assets because of their term. So your total assets are $3.8 million. On the liability side, it's normal accruals, payables, accrued interest, and current and long-term debt. Those amounts total approximately $6 million. Below that is an item relating to the pension plan, and that's what's called deferred inflows of resources, and in your case, it's a proportionate allocation of Percy's overall total, and in your case, the number is $31,000. And also included in your liabilities is your portion of the Percy's net pension liability, which is $18,000 in your case. So the difference between your assets, liabilities, and deferred inflows is a negative $2.1 million, or $2.2 million rounded.
Mr. Chairman, I had a question for the gentleman.
Yes, go right ahead.
My understanding of property taxes receivable is that is property taxes that have been billed within each of our districts but have not been received yet by the county treasurer or transmitted to us.
Correct.
So they remain receivable until they're paid or dealt with in some other fashion. To the extent that we start closing districts, and we will close our first district this year, how is that adjusted out to reflect the effective loss of those receivables at the end of our 2018 fiscal year?
Well, if it was adjusted off, it would have to be through Kootenai County, and I'm assuming they would take that receivable and reassign it to the various agencies that would normally get the receivable or taxes absent of an urban renewal district.
So I guess this is a question also for council. The receivable would accrue not to urban renewal once we close the district, but even though it is for past taxes due during the term of the district, it would accrue then to the individual the individual taxing entities. Is that
Correct.
accurate?
That's my understanding.
Okay,
Right.
so we would basically write that down, and then they would move that to their books as a receivable. Thank you.
Now, that will take some adjustment between the county and the executive director, because they don't always take them off the books at the specific time that we close the district. So there could be some forecast here that would need to be adjusted back to the county for redistribution. I don't know if that'll still happen, but that's the way it has happened in the past.
Oh, where there is a trailing payable that basically comes to the agency, and then the agency has
Yeah,
to
give it back.
remit it? I see.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Is that correct, Rich?
Yes.
And this is actually an account that is adjusted on a yearly basis.
Yes.
And so if we close the district out in August, then our new fiscal year starts in October 1st. So, you know,
There'd be an adjustment that would be reflected in next year's. But if we close the district after September 30th, then the adjustment would be in 2019.
right.
Yeah. Yeah,
That
because
might be
this receivable is as of September 30th. So as of that date, the Urban Renewal Agency was owed this dollar amount, and that was confirmed with Kootenai County.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, good, thank you. Continue.
All right, page 10 is the statement of activities. That identifies, starting in the top left, expenditures or expenses of the agency, largely the tax increment expense paid to the districts. Then you have your general government, admin, and your PERSI benefit, in your case this year, of about $5,000. So those total $1.8 million. That goes across to the right. And then below that is the general revenues of the agency, which is largely comprised of property taxes. So the general revenues were $4.7 million, expenses $1.8 million, which is a positive change in net position of approximately $2.9 million. So if you take that, subtract the beginning net position, which was a negative $5 million, you get your $2.2 million negative at the end of September. So those two statements are the government-wide reports. Page 11 is the balance sheet for your governmental funds, which you just have one. And in your case, you have reconciliations between your governmental funds and your statement of net position, which is reconciled here at the bottom of page 11. Largely, that's debts in your case. So you have the same assets, $3.8 million. Liabilities, only $5,000, and that's because your debts are not there in this report, in the fund reporting. Deferred inflows, that's property taxes that you did not receive within 60 days of September 30th. So that's a significant portion of your property tax receivable. And then the fund equity at the bottom is allocated between various components due to GASB 54. It's segregated between non-spendable items, which is prepaid expenses, debt covenants, committed resources, and assigned. So the overall fund equity is $3.6 million. And then at the bottom is the reconciliation from that number to your net position. Does anybody have any questions on that? Okay, page 12, statement of assets or revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balance. So you have property taxes of $4.5 million, some penalties and interest, other interest on your investments, and other income. That totals $4.6 million. Expenditures, you got the tax increment expense of 1.5 and your admin, and then you have debt service, principal, and interest. The total expenditures for your fund, $4.2 million, which gave you an excess of $400,000. At the bottom, you had some debt financing received, $618,000. So your net change in fund balance for last fiscal year was little over 1 million. And then the next page reconciles that to the change in net position. You start with the 1 million that you had at the fund level, reconciles to the items that are not reported on the net position report to get to, or excuse me, yeah, to get to the change in net position of 2.8 million. All right, page 14 through 28 for the notes to the financial statements. Those are accounting policies, disclosures with regard to various items in your financial statements. Kind of summarize some of those.
I guess from your executive summary in the very beginning, recapping all of this, these number of pages that are following here that we're talking about, there isn't anything of any concern at this point in time, any change recommendations or anything that I was able to see in any of that. Is that correct?
No, you're correct. I think the only thing Diane and I discussed that might make it a little easier is instead of doing these proponent reimbursements internally for the admin, that actually show them in the books, maybe just through a journal entry. We discussed that, but other than that, because right now they're just netted, I guess.
Yeah, they're just taken out of the gross amount that we receive in property taxes, and then that's what we remit to the.
Yeah. So that was one thing we discussed. But
That would just add clarity to the report.
yeah,
It would,
I
yeah.
think so.
Ben, do you have any questions?
I'm on page 18. Just a lot of maybe descriptions of different things in your financial statement, the property tax calendar, use of estimates. Now on note 2 goes into your banking. I think I heard you mention earlier that you do watch your FDIC threshold, and that's part of the audit as well, evaluating that. And as you can see on page 18, there is no excess or funds that you have that aren't covered by FDIC. Of course, the funds you have in the state investment pool are not subject to it since they're U.S. obligations.
And I think, if I could just comment on that, I think our people do a really good job in watching that and making sure. I know our executive director does, but our chair of our finance committee, Commissioner Crosby, and his staff, they look at that on an ongoing, continuous basis to make sure we don't. It's easy to miss something sometimes. And,
Right.
You can usually correct it fairly quickly just by contacting the institution where the funds are held and make adjustments, but sometimes it can get away from you real quick, especially when you don't necessarily have any action for a period of time, and then all of a sudden you do. So,
One question I had, is there, in the notes, and I know on note 1, there's a description of fund balance policies, but is there a breakdown of the various portions of the fund balance, right, which we do on our monthly financial statements? We break them down into special revenue, general fund, et cetera.
Well, the actual details of that are on page 11 is the actual numbers of your fund balance. And then down here under GASB, GASB 54 disclosure, it defines, that's on page 17, defines those fund equity classifications.
Yes.
And then there is some more information further in the report by district, which is kind of disclosing what the overall authorizations were, what the payments have been to date, and so forth.
I see that now, yeah. And the unassigned portion of the fund equity would be what we refer to as general fund, general funds that are available for operations going forward. Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so we went through cash. So that covers page 18, 19, some disclosures on the state investment pool. Actually, it goes into 20. So at the bottom of page 20 is your property tax receivable reconciliation of the beginning receivable, assessments, collections, and ending balance. And then at the bottom of that is the deferred taxes that haven't been collected that you can't reflect in your financial statements because they weren't received within 60 days. You don't have any net capital assets since they're fully depreciated. So that's on page 21. Also on 21 is the long-term obligations and commitments by district. So you can kind of go through all of those. Those indicate, I think, what we just mentioned a minute ago, the initial authorization or reimbursement request and what's been paid subsequent to that. That note also covers some of your debt activity, the interest rates, the amounts that were borrowed, and so forth. That goes through 22. Page 23 is this reconciliation of your debt activity for this last fiscal year. So at the beginning of the year, the agency had liabilities, long-term liabilities of $7.8 million. They borrowed $620, repaid $2.4. So the outstanding balance is approximately $6 million, and 1.6 of that it will be paid within the next fiscal year. So that's measured in an annual because it's segregated on the financial statements. Below that's the future debt requirements for the next 5 years, in which in your case you will satisfy that entire liability within 5 years. Below that's just the interest expense by the district that it was assigned to. All right, page 24, note 7, which is the Percy disclosure. So that's, it's 3 or 4 pages. And I guess this is the 3rd year you've had to report that due to the GASB 68. So these are standard disclosures. You're reporting a proportionate share of the overall Percy amounts. And in your case, yours was a little bit skewed this year because your proportionate share changed so much from fiscal year 15-16 to fiscal year 16-17 because your labor was a lot higher. That's why, in essence, you have a benefit, a pension benefit this year because those numbers had to drop so much because of your apportionment changing.
Could we back up to page 23 again under interest included in direct expense? Just to note, sorry.
Okay.
I think it's important to note that their interest expense on the debt that's referred to there at East Post Falls is significantly reduced from what it could have been or should have been when we were able to come into an agreement with the lender to they had a reserve requirement for us, and as we fell below the 10% reserve requirement, because of the balance, they also allowed us to reduce the amount of the set aside to offset, and we applied that to the principal to continue to reduce the principal balance and interest expense faster than what was on schedule.
Right, yeah, I saw that you accelerated that payment.
Thank you, I'm sorry.
Oh, no problem. Okay, so I'll get down to the end of the Percy disclosure.
Bless you.
Okay. So the Percy disclosure ends on page 27, which is also the last part of the notes. So page 29, well, that's some more Percy stuff. This is required information of Percy, because of Percy, which eventually will have 10 years information, but so far you just have 3 years. So it's data relating to your percentage of the net pension liability in a percentage term and a dollar amount, your covered payroll. So that's what I was saying. You can see your covered payroll in 16 was roughly 90,000, and your covered payroll in 17 was 39,000. So the percentage dropped significantly. The bottom is a report table that shows the funding relative to the required contribution relative to the actual contribution. You can see it was overfunded in all 3 years. So that's required information. Page 30 is the budget, also required supplementary information. So this goes through your original budget, final budget, and the actual expenses and activity. So as you can see, your revenues budgeted were 4.4 million, actually received were 4.6. Expenditures, that was amended to a threshold of 6.2 million. The actual expenditures were 4.2. And then the net result is the same as what was the change in fund balance of 1.1 million roughly. Any questions there? That's page 30. Page 31 is the notes to the budget. Which in that we would identify if there was any budget violations. And in fact, disclosed that it was amended. Okay, 32 is the report on internal control and compliance. So in this report, if we had the internal control deficiencies that we had identified in the audit, we would note them here if they met certain criteria. That would be both for internal control and compliance, which in this audit there was nothing identified as a deficiency that we would report, that we did report on or needed to report on.
What threshold are you using in your analysis of that?
It's not
Risk.
a dollar threshold. Basically, there's what's identified as a control deficiency, a significant deficiency, and a material weakness. So we would have to disclose significant deficiencies and material weaknesses in this report, but not control deficiencies.
And that would be an internal procedure that was either weak or not aligned with the way it should be accounted for and that sort of thing. So
Yeah.
there was none of that.
Correct. So Diane's doing a fantastic job with that.
I think so too.
Well, that concludes the summarizing the report. Any questions?
Are there any questions of Lee? Okay, thank you very, very
Thank
much.
you.
And I would entertain a motion to accept the 2017 fiscal year audit as presented.
Mr. Chairman, I would move the exception, ACCEPTI, and adoption of the audited reports for the year ending September 30th, 2017.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, there's a second. Moved and second. Any further discussion? If not, roll call vote, please.
Hauser,
Aye.
Coles,
Aye.
Davis,
Aye.
Baltzell,
Aye.
Carstensen,
Aye.
Crosby.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
You very much, Lee. Appreciate it. Okay, the next item of business, new business, is authorization for newly elected officers to be designated signers. Since we did not make any changes at this time, do we still need a letter or just update the letter to show current?
Yeah, if we could have a motion, and then I'll just update the letter and say that they did not change, but they also require us to send the minutes to the meeting
Reflecting
stating that, so.
Sure. Okay, I would entertain that motion then to authorize the 2018 elected officers as authorized signers for all financial transactions, including checking and savings accounts, bank certificates of deposit, real property transaction, and authorize the executive director to have access to all account balance and month-end statements information for internal funds management purposes.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion or questions? If not, roll call vote, please.
Crosby,
Aye.
Carstensen,
Aye.
Baltzell,
Aye.
Davis,
Aye.
Coles,
Aye.
Hauser.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, motion carried. Thank you very much. All right, staff report and updates.
Thank you. This morning, I distributed the conflict of interest disclosure letters, and once I receive them, I will submit them to the mayor. On the RFP for 310 North Spokane Street, unfortunately, we did not receive any responses on that. I will be meeting later this morning with the city administrator, and I'll find out what the city plans to do moving forward on that project.
Speaking of that, if I could interrupt just for a moment, do any of the commissioners have any thoughts or ideas on moving forward with trying to get that property developed and so on? Anything that you would like to pass on to Diane for her meeting this morning? Oh, excuse me.
Mr. Chairman, my thoughts are, I think we'd be well advised to just sit on it for a while. I don't see any urgent need to try to do anything different than what we've done. Time's on our side. Be nice to have that working, but barring anything exciting going on across the street over in the landing, I see no reason to move with haste.
Yeah, I think that's probably the key factor there as far as being able to jumpstart something on the east side of the street. But anybody else?
One of the comments that we received from, I think it was John Young,
Yes.
who's a local, very prominent local developer, is that they would have liked to have had environmental study. And I think that it would be in the city's best interest and in ours to jointly move that along and get that study done and see if that property, because of its proximity to the railroad, is potentially a brownfield site, or if there are any other issues. If it's a brownfield site, there may be something we can do to more directly enhance the value of the property.
I spoke with the city administrator about that, and so I gave her the names of the companies that we contacted when we were doing the French Cleaners Brownsfield site, and I asked for quotes on that for them, for the city, and so those have been all submitted to the administrator, and it probably will qualify for a Brownsfield site, so there's an application also that I gave to the city on that, so I'm thinking that's going to be their next step.
Good.
Perfect.
Yeah, sounds good, because that moving forward and can get that resolved will also make it easier we can be patient, and then we'll have the right answers when we do find somebody to come. Okay, thank you.
So the next thing is the 4th Avenue parking lot update. The agency had entered into an MOU with the city on May 16th of 2017. At that time, the cost was not expected to exceed $100,000. The engineer's estimate on October was $154,400. The city is trying to get that cost down to the $100,000 that we committed to. So in attempting to get the cost down, the city is planning to phase the lighting out and remove the chamber steps and the landscaping from the bid package and add them in as ad alternatives. And John Manley is hoping to take the plans to the City Council on February 6th. And if approved, they will advertise and accept bids probably through mid-March with a completion date of June 1st. The MOU states that the agency will pay invoices by January 30th, 2018, which is coming up and we have no invoices. So that will have to be amended once we get more information from the city. So if bid comes in too high, they might not do the project this year, or they could possibly request additional funding from the agency. So that's just an update on where that is.
What was that cutoff date?
January 30th.
No, I mean, you said in June or something?
June 1st.
For the.
Yes,
or-
June 1st for completion of the parking lot.
Because our district closes in August.
Right. And they
Mr.
felt
Chairman,
they
I'm
could do
I'm
that.
concerned about some of the cuts. I mean, I know there's at least one handicap spot there, and that would lead me to conclude that the steps would be needed. I mean, I think that the obvious question is to say back to the city, if this was being built by a private developer, would you require those steps? The same thing with lighting. I mean, this is a parking lot to be used by the general public who comes here to this building in the evenings. All the other parking lot areas that are available to the public when they come to City Hall or the chamber are lighted. I think, if it's, if perhaps we need or the city needs to contribute more capital to making this a first-class improvement, then I think we should consider that.
And John Manley, when I spoke with him day before yesterday in the afternoon, he stated that they might move that handicap parking place in front of the chamber building.
So is it possible in your meetings with Shelley that you maybe propose that the city come in and contribute some to that project so it can be done correctly?
Okay, I will.
I agree, and I think I totally agree with what Lynn had to say, and the steps, take out the steps. Right now, all they are is cinder blocks, and frankly, they're dangerous in themselves.
Yes.
To go up and down, and what needs to happen, it needs to be legitimately designed and constructed steps with handrails. That just only makes sense. We don't want a third-class parking lot next to all of this facility when you have so many different people of various kinds with issues or non-issues that otherwise you're going to, they're just asking for a problem, I think. I think it needs to be done and done first class or not at all.
Well, just to speak to the little cinder block steps, those are really just convenience for the staff parking that's there.
Right.
So we can remove those. Those are not built in. There's still
Right.
adequate approach, and it's ADA compliant with that cutout on the east side of the building to go in there. It's just really a convenience. But with the initial conversations of putting the good, appropriate stairs in, we had agreed that we would lose a parking space there, so it felt like it was more of a trade. So we're hoping that we can still do that, and maybe we can go back to the city and ask that they contribute some, since Urban Renewal had committed that $100,000. I don't know that the conversation was that we would pay for the entire project. It was $100,000, and that was our commitment.
Right. Right, because at the time, their estimate was under 100,000. We say we'd go up to 100,000.
Correct.
Would you be interested in having Jamie attend that meeting with you, since she has a connected interest, you might say, in terms of the parking lot, or do you?
Whatever you're comfortable with.
Sure,
Diane.
I think it's 11:30 this morning.
Oh, I can't do that, but I would be happy to meet with you afterwards.
Or at least
Okay.
you two connect on that, because I think that's good input from your standpoint.
And I'm sure the city's aware of the timing issues we have in closing this district out, but I think they should perhaps be reminded that we have a finite date by which we anticipate closing this district out, and once they do that, then the funds either get dispersed to the taxing entities if they're not utilized for this project.
Absolutely.
Do you know off the top of your head what our funding would be at the left, the 100,000 plus, between now and the end of the fiscal year, or the closing date?
How much increment we'll have? I had predicted $543,000, I believe it was. And so when we go to rebate the dollars in August, once the district closes, my estimate is that the city would get $170,000, give or take,
Just their share of,
their share of that.
You might remind them of that in the meeting.
I mentioned it to John.
Did you?
I did.
was that 500,000 with or without the assumption that the proceeds would be used, the 100,000 would be used?
I can't remember if it included or did
And my
not
recollection was that it included the 100.
If it did include, I did look at a worksheet this morning, and so it's based on last year's tax assessment, so I have to go back in and redo that worksheet. And so I quickly looked at it this morning, and using last year's of what we had anticipated we'll have left over to rebate, the city's portion was $170,000. So
So, yeah, we have
I
some,
could be wrong on the
we have some wiggle
540,
room on that for sure.
right?
Yeah, I mean, right now, we have a carry forward of, as of 12/31 of 108,000, so.
Larry, did you have a question?
Yeah, just a comment and a question. I seem to recall last year that we were told this was a small, easy project and it would be done before winter.
Yep.
What happened that it didn't get done?
Larry, I think the biggest issue was the lighting. The lighting came in at $40,000. And so, and like I said, it came in $54,000 higher than what they thought it was going to. And so the city's just been trying to whittle down that cost. And then it got to be late fall, winter. And so they just haven't, I don't understand why it's taken so long, because we had hoped that we would have it done by now. So
Well, it seems to me that the lighting would be a separate contractor from the blacktop and the grading. So why couldn't that part of it have been done and then the lighting come in later? I guess that's what baffles me.
yeah, I think when they designed the project, it included everything, so. And that was from the JUB, the design contract. Their estimate was the $154,000, which included the lighting and the landscaping and the steps and.
Yeah, I'm not convinced that come springtime, that there's going to be all kinds of contractors that are going to be fighting for this small project, as we were told. I think that the way 2018 sounds, I think there's going to be more than enough work out there without messing around with this. But that's,
Wasn't part of the plan to have some of the city staff take care of some of the,
The city staff will, they'll have somebody do the curbing and all of that stuff, and the city staff will do some of the paving and some of the other engineering
That
that
might
might
help with the
take
timeline.
place.
Just clarification, the 154, is that a engineer's estimate or is that an actual bid? So they haven't even actually gone out and bid.
Correct, that was the
So
engineer's
this is just the
estimate.
engineer's estimate, which is notoriously not accurate, one way or the other.
Yeah, right,
I think it'd be smart to take the requirements of how they want it to develop, what the plan is, and go out and get bids and see where they are. Maybe higher, maybe lower, but it still may be well within the dollars we have to work with.
Chairman, this kind of brings into play a question that just came to my mind is, because we just talked about the closing of this district, and yet we just spoke earlier about us participating in the sale or helping the city sell that property that the city has within the district. So if we close the district, how are we going to represent the city with that sale of that property if it's no longer in the district? Because we would have effectively closed the district. So we would be able to have some control up until the point we close the district, which would be in August. So time is of the essence, yet is it? You know,
Well, the plan was to sell that property before the district closes.
yeah,
And right now, that doesn't look like it's going to happen. So,
My guess is if that happens and we need to close a district, then any interest that we would have in that property would revert back to the city, and they can do what they want with it, I guess.
correct.
Alternatively, the city could give us the property, and then we could incorporate it into a separate district if that came about.
yeah. Is this something I was thinking about here? Because we were talking about closing the district and this other parking lot. And it's almost like a catch-22 with this other parcel. If we are representing, trying to sell the property and the district closed, then how do we represent trying to sell the property if it's no longer in district?
Okay, good points. So we need to move on that.
Okay, thank you. Copper Basin has completed I think it's their 5th phase of work out in the Tullamore District, and they have turned in their packet for submittal of the expenses. So I have met with Welsh Comer, and we went over that packet, and I just got a task order from him 2 days ago, so that will be coming before commission next month to do his review on that. So, I have that. Then in speaking with Steve White from Copper Basin, he said the next phase will be completed in 2018, and that would include the remainder of Kildare to Highway 41 and Hope Avenue from Charleville to Highway 41, and then all their work out there should be completed. I have been conversing with Jay Hassel from JUB, and am pleased to announce that they won first place in the 2017 Engineer Excellence Awards competition for Category H, which is transportation, for the work they did on the Greens Ferry overpass. They were very proud of that project and the positive impact it's had on the community, so they applied for an American Council of Engineering Companies, or ACEC award, which will be profiled at the ACEC of Idaho luncheon to be held April 9th, 2018 in Boise at the Grove Hotel. Mr. Hassel has asked if I, as their client, would be interested in attending the luncheon, and I told him that I would ask commission if we could fit it into our budget for either myself or the chairman to attend that award ceremony in Boise. So I am asking for direction from the commission on whether you would like me to pursue this or not. I've checked into some of the air flights, because we would just spend one day there and fly down and fly back in the evening. So I'm just looking for direction whether you want me to pursue that or not.
Comments? Well, obviously, it's a tremendous award to be for them to receive, and certainly well-deserved. Makes us, I think, pretty proud of the project. A lot of work went into that with a lot of folks here, and it would be nice to be a part of that. And I think certainly the executive director and probably the chairman or that person's representative, if you can't go, should probably go there. However, I don't feel totally comfortable using taxpayer dollars to pay for that trip when they're the ones we paid to do the work that they got recognized for. Maybe they can take care of our travel expenses or something, and it's not a lot, but it still is taxpayer money. Any thoughts?
With that, may I mention that in our emails going back and forth, he invited, so that I didn't know whether that included the airfare or not. And so I directly asked him, and he said that they would love to pay, as it's the engineering award for the agency's project, but as a company, they tend to be a little cautious regarding paying for public servants' costs in excess of $50.
Yeah, they're limited by the law to $50.
So they'll pay for the luncheon,
So that also puts the limit on any of us to receive something from them. Is that what you're saying?
That's right.
Also? Yeah. There was, what, 100, how much were the tickets?
The tickets range from $137 to $170 round trip for one person.
So you're talking
So double that.
$300.
And that's, the last time I looked into flights from here to Boise, it's like the Bataan Death March. It basically, you have to get up at 4 in the morning to get your 5 o'clock flight and come home through Portland at 7 or 8 at night.
Right.
Yeah, these were direct flights, leaving at like 6:20 in the morning and returning either at 3:18 p.m., which I don't know if that gives us enough time, or else 5:30 in the afternoon. So
Any thoughts?
When the ceremony is in April, so we have some time that we can maybe
we do.
come up with something creative and discuss.
Rich, you look like you want to say something.
Well, I think it's a great idea. I think it would be great to have someone there to maybe answer any questions or anything like that, but I too understand the use of taxpayers' dollars, but just a thought, and I think we need to discuss this further, but if we're using the interest that we received off of the funds that we have in the bank, are we using taxpayers' dollars? Or are we using interest? Funds that,
Gray area.
But interest is a result of the taxpayer dollars being invested. So it kind of depends
I mean, it just
which arm
depends
you
on how
want
you
to
look
pull.
at it, so, but, yeah, I think further discussion maybe.
Yeah, let's just give that some more thought and
Just as a, add to the discussion, I'd be willing to fund the flight down and back.
I'll just say, I probably should just keep my mouth shut, but compared to other agencies around here, our administrative expenses are very, very low. A lot of other leaders or executive directors of local agencies, I mean, they're down in Boise like every other week, so.
Right.
I'd want to
And we
just
do have travel budget, don't we, I think, for this coming year?
I believe
potentially for
there is
legislative.
something in there for travel. I don't know if it's sufficient for 2 flights, but I don't have it in front of me.
Yeah, we have meetings. We had like $240 in meetings,
Yep.
and then there's the contingency amount.
Contingency.
Yeah, it's contingency.
Well, let's dwell on it for a little bit and have some conversation a little bit later. And I'm really interested in your thoughts and
Well, my thought is I'd certainly encourage us to find a way to send Diane and Jerry. I think that was quite a project that we undertook, and I don't think any of us realized what we were undertaking at the time. And we found out when we were attending 2 and 3 meetings a day and doing all the walkthroughs that seemed like every time we did a walkthrough, there got to be more things that were needed to be corrected. And I think that Diane did a super job of keeping us, our nose to the grindstone on this thing, and Jerry, you did too. So I'd like to see us find a way to do this, just my opinion.
I'd be happy to attend with her, but I really have to take a back seat to what Larry did. He served on the committees and met every week or every other week for entire afternoons and numerous trips down to the site. And really, in my mind, it's he did way more than I did, that's for darn sure. Serving in that capacity as our representative to the planning group. So we can leave that open for now. And if it looks appropriate to utilize our travel funds or part of our budget to cover that, we'll address that a little bit later. See if we can find out when they need to know by.
Okay.
And then we'll kind of go from there.
And then, so lastly, I would like to schedule a workshop for March 6th so that I can present the 2017 annual report to commission before I formally present it to the city council on March 20th. And I also anticipate having the resolution for the closure of City Center District, which will declare the excess funds for discussion at that meeting. The resolution will be on the March 15th agenda for approval, and then once the agency passes the resolution, it goes to City Council on April 3rd, where the city will pass an ordinance to adopt the resolution to close the district. And once the ordinance is recorded, I will file it with the county recorder, the assessor, auditor, affecting taxing districts, and the state tax commission. So if we could schedule a March 6th.
What day of the week is that?
It'll be a Tuesday.
Is he at 8 in the lower? I'm fine with that, or as far as I know, anyway. You all
Yep.
okay with that?
Works for me.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Let's put that on the schedule, and we'll develop the agenda because there may be some other things coming down the pike.
Okay.
Okay, very good. Any other questions on the staff report? Very good, Diane, kept us right up to date. And commissioner comments?
Chairman, I would like to suggest that we ask the District Review Committee, as we close City Center, to go through that process of lessons learned, accomplishments, challenges,
Good, bad, and the ugly.
issues. Yeah, I don't know if we did this when we closed the River Bend project, but this, I think we only learn from doing, and since there is turnover on this commission, that it would be good to have something that would help the collective memory going forward, because this has been a challenging district, and, we may consider another district within the confines of what we class as, or hope to class as downtown. And I think benefiting from what we've done over the past years with this district might be useful to, don't hold back.
I think so.
If we screwed up, we
Yeah.
need to say we screwed up.
Yeah. And I think probably if that could even be done before we actually close the district, you wouldn't have to wait till you close it. Probably wait till you get the information on the parking lot resolved, and then delve into it. Very good suggestion, and the chairman is willing to take that on, it looks like. So that's a good, and we should make that part of what we do, because I don't think we did that at River Bend.
I don't know.
I think Colin is,
February, you think, a meeting with the committee,
I'm thinking
you.
probably we should wait until
March?
after they get the bids back to see whether they're going to proceed with that parking lot.
Okay,
So, in March,
I
yes.
think Colin is uniquely qualified based on his long experience with the city and his work with planning, and I think it would be a very helpful report for all of us.
Very good. Thank you. Any other comments, commissioners? Okay, well, we've lasted a little bit longer than we have normally in the last few months, and that's a good thing because we covered a lot of ground. I appreciate all of what you do and the support that you've given me and the executive committee, and Pete for your expertise and support. Outstanding, and you as well, Diane, with no question about that. I can catch her any time of the day or night just by calling her on the phone. And I don't do that, but I mean, I know I could. And so I appreciate the work you do, your professionalism, and your accuracy and all of that. And the committee chairs and the committee people always step up to the plate when it's time to look at something that falls into your purview, and I appreciate that very much. 2018 could be an exciting year leading into the future for us, and we'll see how all that shakes out. And so that's all I have to say, except thank you, and thanks to the city staff for their support on these meetings and elsewhere. It's very much appreciated. And with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. We're adjourned.